we're going to talk about Billy's roster retention. There's been a lot of talk about the Nico Iamaleava situation with him leaving Tennessee, going to UCLA. Has he officially committed to UCLA? Because everyone reported it, like Colin Coward reported it, but I don't feel like I've seen like an official post from like Nico or like Hayes Fawcett or anyone.
I'm not sure. I'm not sure if Nico has specifically. I mean, like On3 and 247 have like posted it, like reported it. ESPN, I think, reported it. So it's been like really widely reported. But I think you're right. I'm not sure Nico or his family have actually posted anything yet.
Yeah, I'm looking at 247. They don't have him listed committed to UCLA or anything. So
yeah, I mean, it's far along enough that we've seen an unofficial NIL figure for what his deal is. I saw it was like 1.6 or something like that, less than what he was.
That was the number said.
Yeah, less than he was reportedly going to make at Tennessee this year.
And that's not even including taxes, which is a lot more in California than it is in Tennessee.
That is true.
But, I mean, the point of this we're trying to bring up here is the fact that, I mean, we've had big-time quarterback questions here with, like, the Jaden Rashada situation, which is now moving up in the courts. Like, I mean, I'm no expert in that, so I'm not really even going to talk about it. But outside of that, when you look at most teams that are losing like near 20 players, and it's usually a couple starters or a couple like very valuable pieces. But then you look at Florida and what we've done. Like, yes, we lost TJ Searcy, we lost Jack Pyburn. Is there any like big playmaker we lost this past year?
Not this cycle, no. I have to think back to last cycle to think of like who were like really impactful players who Billy lost, and it's Princely and ETN. Like that's really it. And I mean, I'm not sure. I think this team in 2024 is that much different with those guys here.
Yeah, I mean, to interrupt a little bit, I don't know how we forgot to say it, but like, Happy Easter, everyone.
Happy Easter, guys.
Of course.
We got so wrapped up in the transfer portal.
Yeah, so much going on that kind of just forget it's Easter today. Yeah, Happy Easter Sunday. But getting back onto what you're saying, like, Billy hasn't really been losing any of his like major impact players. I mean, you talked about Princely and ETN. I mean, again, you see Ball and Jacoby Jackson come in, be the backup for Montreal in that ETN position, and they did just fine. They went for over, what did they each have? Like 600 yards, 600, 500. They went for over 1,000 yards combined. Like, you got that made up production from missing ETN, even with Montreal missing like 4.5 games that he missed. So you look at that, and we didn't really lose anything from losing those players. I mean, you go look at Georgia. Like, you go look at Dumas Johnson, they lost last year to Kentucky. He ended up being a really solid player for that Georgia team. Look at Alabama. They go and lose Caleb Downs to Ohio State, who might be the best safety in all of college football. Like, these teams are losing their best players. But then you go and look at Florida's best players from last year. Jake Slaughter, first-team All-American. He's returning. I mean, DJ Lagway, 5-star QB. Some are projecting to be the best quarterback. Caleb Banks, Tyreek Sapp, Devin Moore. I mean, Billy's doing a really good job at keeping his starters, but specifically the ones that really irreplaceable to stay on this team.
Yeah. No, I mean, I think that's the key. Like, I think you look at ETN and Princely, and it's like those are both very good players. Those are guys that are going to be playing on Sundays in the fall. But I mean, I think they're a little bit different. And in Princely's case, I think we had kind of all resigned that he was going to the draft anyway. Like, I'm not sure we really expected him to be on the team in 2024 regardless.
No.
And I mean, ETN obviously was pretty bad at the time. I think the fan base reacted to that one pretty negatively. But I mean, when you look at the season he had at Georgia, it was almost identical to the kinds of seasons he was having at Florida. And I think that, like, again, like you said, with Jacoby Johnson and Jaden Baugh, and even in Montreal when he was healthy, like, Florida just didn't really need help in the running back room this year. Like, they got ample production from the guys they had. Like, so I'll give Billy credit. Like, I mean, I've been very critical of Billy and this regime on a lot of issues, but I think it's worth giving them credit for the fact that they've built a culture, and sort of now that they've got their guys and the way that they want to identify talent and people, the way now that the building they've got, they're keeping it pretty together. They're not losing key guys. And I think part of that's, the culture building element and like who Billy is as a coach. I think part of that strategy too. I mean, we've always kind of been like, why aren't we doing more in the transfer portal? Well, I mean, part of that is because we used a lot of NIL funds to make sure guys like Jake Slaughter came back this year. So yeah, Rob.
George, is this the calling portion of the show? We just have to do the show early today. We've got some plans later on, so decided to do it a little bit early. We'll have a call-in portion one day in the summer. We will do that. We'll have a call-in portion for you, Rob. Both of your guys' facial hair makes you look Amish.
Yeah, we got a barber appointment set for Tuesday, Rob. We're taking care of that. It's been too long.
It's not happy Easter for George. Ooh,
that sucks, man. I'm sorry to hear that. I've been dealing with transmission issues in my car too, and I probably need a new one as well. So that really sucks. I'm sorry.
I'm not going to post this one on here, but oh yeah, I'm going to go through the list of players that have transferred out for this offseason. Greg Smith, I mean, we'll talk about it a little bit later. It just got confirmed Thursday that he will be entering the portal. Was projected to be a backup. Was projected to be a solid depth piece. Again, you're probably not losing someone that would have been a huge difference maker. And we're already looking at somebody in the portal to replace him. Marcus Burke, it's time for him to move on. TJ Searcy, Jack Piper are the two guys that actually had valuable snaps. But you now look at that Jack position with Jaden Woods, LJ McCray, George Gums. I would be surprised if the play got worse at that Jack. I would expect it to be better. These are guys that had a limited ceiling. They raised the floor, which now the floor probably is lower without them, but the ceiling is so much more higher now. Gavin Hill didn't really do anything. Went to Florida A&M. I mean, looking at the other transfers, Arliss Boardingham with the Bowling Green. We had two players go to Liberty. Deuce Spurlock, Christian Williams, guys that practice teamers. I guess some bigger names like Kelby Collins and Jakeem Jackson going to Bama and LSU. Guys who haven't really played. I mean, they're guys you would like to keep on the roster because of their high talent rating. But, sometimes it's just time for someone to move on. And, I mean, Andy Jean, we've already seen now enter the portal again. And I know we got an offer from FAU. So I don't know where Andy Jean's going after leaving Pitt.
Yeah, I mean, I think the pretty common thread here is it's either guys who just are not playing a major role, or it's guys who are maybe good at something, but the ceiling isn't there. Like, that's kind of what I think, like, when I think about, like, Pyburn. Pyburn, like, really good player, good at what he does, good at what he's asked to do. I'm sure he's going to have a fine season at LSU this year, but he didn't really ever have a ceiling where he could emerge as, like, a 5-6 plus sack guy. Like, that just wasn't going to really be him, I don't think. So, like, I think in this modern, like, would you like to have all these guys? Yeah, but, like, at the end of the day, you do have a realistic discussion, because in modern college sports, you have to kind of make decisions about who's worth using a roster spot and using the NIL funds on. And, if House goes into effect and we get 105 roster spots, as it is kind of looking like is going to be the case, that gives you a little bit more flexibility. But I mean, for the time being, I think there's an element of guys that you got to just kind of realistically, and I think it's kind of a mutual decision of coach and player being like, hey, this just isn't really going to work next year. And I think that, with maybe a couple exceptions, has kind of been the case for pretty much all the guys Florida's seen leave, especially this past offseason.
Yeah, I think there's another reason that we're keeping these players. I mean, I think it's pretty clear to tell. Billy is trying to build like a recruiting culture here at Florida, not someone that's just going to go out into the portal. I mean, we took 5 transfers. I mean, Harrison Bailey to be a backup QB, Caraway to be a depth piece just in case injuries happen. Sturdivant, now obviously someone that we took to come be the wide receiver 1. Kofi Asare, someone that high upside guy from a lower school. And Tommy Doman, you need 1-year punter deal. Then even you look at last year, I mean, we took the wide receiver 1 with Badger. I mean, we took 2 receivers in DK. But then you look around, Cormani was a depth piece or somewhat 5-star guy that had the walk on, his off the field issues. And then Jason Zandamela, high freshman. He didn't even play a year. And same with Jameer Grimesley. Like, those were 2 freshmen that transferred before the spring even happens. And then Grayson Howard, same. He was he would have been a sophomore last year, but still, guy that they won out of high school. I mean, Ossaw Turner, you brought in to be a 1-year deal. Gums was another high upside guy that played at the lower level. Turquez Bridges, someone that really stepped up.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like they didn't really go out into the portal and get players that, maybe could have been like higher risk players. Like a Walter Nolan, maybe could have been like a locker room, not a best fit in the locker room. They went and got guys that can help for like 1 year, or they got really young players. So I think it's
Yeah.
pretty clear Billy knows what he wants in his locker room, and he goes out, recruits for it, and goes into transfer portal and stays on that specifically as well.
Yeah, I mean, I think part of it too is like Florida has money and from an NIL perspective, but Florida doesn't have a Phil Knight. Like Florida doesn't have some billionaire
No.
who's sitting here bankrolling everything they want to do. So at the end of the day, it's like, do you go after a Walter Nolan or do you go after 3 other guys who could play varying, depth to starting roles? They've opted for that. And I mean, I think you can criticize that, but I think it's understandable too. Because I think especially before this year, the roster was kind of in a position where one guy wasn't gonna make the difference. And that like being a playoff caliber team, you kind of needed to flesh out the depth a little bit and flesh out the pieces. I think we're getting closer to a point now where I think maybe you can afford to take swings like that, because I think the roster and the depth is in a pretty solid spot to where, can you afford to swing on a really high level transfer who's going to, require a pretty hefty NIL payday? Maybe it works, maybe it doesn't, but if it works, it helps a lot. Like, I think that is kind of where we're getting it to this point, but that just hasn't really been Florida's strategy under Billy Napier at all.
Yeah, absolutely not. It's recruit and get a couple of guys out the portal, and it's like, I mean, we'll see if it works. I mean, this is really the make or break year, so we will see if keeping your roster, the guys that you liked out of high school, is going to be the thing that works out instead of going to get those 1-year portal players at every position you have questions about. Like, could we have gotten an edge to replace a Jack Pyburn or someone guy that had 10 sacks or 5 sacks at another school and come to replace Pyburn? Seriously, we could have, but we stake with LJ McRae's, the George Gums, the 2 freshmen you have coming in. We stick with those guys, and it's going to be ride or die. If it works, it works. If it doesn't, it doesn't. That's really all we can say about it.
And again, if you go get an edge guy like that, maybe that comes at the cost of giving Jake Slaughter an NIL deal he'll come back to. Maybe that comes at the cost of keeping Damian George around. So, I mean, it's kind of zero sum to an extent, because like you just have to decide what is more valuable to your team. And they've decided that the kind of the volume and the sort of, I don't want to say quantity over quality, but they've decided they would rather have kind of a talent base to work with than just go get one guy and invest the whole season in that guy being a superstar.